Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most controversial and influential figures in modern history, Donald Trump. And as we explore his journey, his victories, and his defeats, you'll also have the chance to improve your English with this detailed script. So, stay until the end and enjoy. Donald Trump is not just a billionaire businessman or a former US president. He is a political and media phenomenon who has reshaped the way politics is conducted in the 21st century. You can love him or hate him, but you can't ignore him. From his beginnings in the real estate business to his meteoric rise to the White House, Trump has always been at the center of attention. His presidency was marked by controversial decisions, internal and international challenges, and a communications style that broke all presidential norms. But how did Trump go from the world of business and television to winning the presidency of the most powerful country in the world? How did he manage to challenge the political establishment and gain millions of loyal supporters? And more importantly, will he return to power? In today's video, we'll dive into Donald Trump's journey, exploring the key moments of his life, his highs and lows in the presidency, and the impact he still has on global politics. If you're interested in politics, history, or simply want to understand one of the most remarkable personalities of our time, this video is for you. Now, let's begin with the first topic: Donald Trump's rise from business to politics. Donald Trump was born on June 14, 1946, in Queens, New York, into a family with deep roots in the real estate business. His father, Fred Trump, was one of the city's leading developers, responsible for building thousands of housing units in Brooklyn and Queens. From an early age, Donald was exposed to the world of business and learned from his father the strategies to maximize profits and expand properties. However, his ambition was always greater than simply following in his father's footsteps. He wanted to build something grand, something that would put his name at the top. Trump attended the New York Military Academy as a teenager, which helped shape his discipline and determination. Later, he studied at the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania, one of the most prestigious business schools in the United States. Armed with this knowledge, he officially joined the family business in the 1970s. But unlike his father, who focused on middle-class housing developments, Donald Trump wanted something more glamorous. His goal was to conquer Manhattan and turn his brand into a symbol of luxury and power. Trump's first major move was the renovation of the Commodore Hotel near Grand Central Station. He secured a favorable tax deal with the city of New York and transformed the rundown building into the luxurious Grand Hyatt Hotel. This success was the launching pad for his empire's expansion. Soon after, he embarked on his most ambitious project, the construction of Trump Tower, a 58-story skyscraper on Fifth Avenue. Completed in 1983, Trump Tower became a symbol of status and power, attracting celebrities, business tycoons, and even political figures. With the success of Trump Tower, Donald expanded his brand into casinos, hotels, and golf courses. His extravagant style and knack for self-promotion made him a celebrity beyond the real estate sector. In the 1980s and 1990s, he was a constant presence in the media, giving interviews, appearing on talk shows, and cultivating his image as a successful businessman. However, not everything was smooth sailing. In the early 1990s, Trump faced major financial difficulties, with his Atlantic City casinos accumulating massive debt. He had to renegotiate loans and even sell off some of his assets to avoid bankruptcy. But Trump always had a unique talent for turning situations around. In the 2000s, he found a new way to expand his influence: television. He became the host of the reality show The Apprentice, where contestants competed for a job in one of his companies. The show was a massive success, solidifying his image as a tough and charismatic businessman. His catchphrase, "You're fired," became a cultural phenomenon. At this point, his media presence and public appeal became even more evident. He realized that his popularity extended beyond the world of business and entertainment. The idea of entering politics started to take shape. Trump had occasionally flirted with the idea in the 2000s, but it wasn't until 2015 that he officially announced his candidacy for President of the United States. His opening speech was explosive. He criticized traditional politicians, attacked illegal immigration, and promised to make America great again. With his direct, aggressive, and unfiltered style, he managed to capture the attention of millions of Americans who felt disillusioned with the political establishment. The businessman had made his definitive transition into politics and was about to shock the world with his meteoric rise. This was just the beginning of Trump's journey to the White House. In the next section, we'll explore how he defied all expectations and won the 2016 election, one of the most controversial in American history. When Donald Trump announced his candidacy for president on June 16, 2015, few people took him seriously. Political analysts dismissed him as a publicity stunt, comedians mocked his campaign, and even members of the Republican Party saw him as an outsider with no real chance of winning. But what many failed to understand was that Trump was tapping into a deep frustration within a large portion of the American electorate. His campaign was about to change the course of U.S. politics forever. From the very first moments, Trump's campaign was unlike any other. He positioned himself as an anti-establishment candidate, someone who wasn't part of the political elite and didn't rely on big donors or traditional campaign strategies. Instead of carefully scripted speeches, he spoke directly to the people, often improvising and using blunt, controversial language. His slogan, "Make America Great Again," resonated with millions who felt left behind by globalization, job losses, and what they saw as weak leadership in Washington. Trump's main advantage was his ability to dominate media coverage. He understood the power of television and social media better than any other candidate. Every controversial statement, every Twitter post, and every rally became headline news, giving him billions of dollars in free publicity. His unfiltered style made him a magnet for both supporters and critics, but most importantly, it kept him in the spotlight 24/7. The Republican primaries were brutal. Trump faced seasoned politicians like Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, and Ted Cruz, all of whom had strong backing from the Republican establishment. But one by one, they fell. Trump insulted his opponents, gave them nicknames like Low Energy Jeb and Lying Ted, and exposed their weaknesses on live television debates. The political playbook was rewritten. Trump was playing by his own rules, and it was working. By the time he secured the Republican nomination, the entire political world was in shock. Now, he had to face Hillary Clinton, the Democratic candidate. Clinton was the embodiment of the political establishment, former First Lady, U.S. Senator, and Secretary of State. She had decades of experience, a powerful political machine behind her, and the full support of the mainstream media. Many believed her victory was inevitable. But Trump had an advantage that no one had anticipated: his ability to connect with disillusioned voters. He focused on key battleground states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, places that had traditionally voted for Democrats, but were suffering from economic decline. He promised to bring back jobs, renegotiate trade deals, and put America first. His rallies were massive, filled with passionate supporters who felt ignored by Washington. The campaign took a dark turn with scandals on both sides. Hillary Clinton faced controversy over her use of a private email server while serving as Secretary of State, raising questions about her trustworthiness. Trump, on the other hand, faced backlash over leaked recordings of past controversial remarks. The debates were some of the most heated in history, with personal attacks overshadowing policy discussions. As Election Day approached, the polls predicted a Clinton victory. Most analysts believed Trump had no path to 270 electoral votes. But on November 8, 2016, in one of the biggest political upsets in modern history, Donald Trump won the presidency. His victory stunned the world. He had defied the political establishment, the media, and even his own party to become the 45th President of the United States. His victory speech struck a surprisingly conciliatory tone, promising to unite the country. But the deep divisions exposed during the campaign would not heal easily. America was entering a new and unpredictable political era, with Trump at the center of it all. In the next section, we'll explore his years in the White House, his biggest achievements, his most controversial decisions, and the challenges he faced as president. When Donald Trump took the oath of office on January 20, 2017, he inherited a deeply divided country. His presidency was not going to be traditional, it was going to be disruptive, unpredictable, and filled with both accomplishments and controversies. From the moment he stepped into the White House, Trump made it clear that he intended to govern the same way he had campaigned, aggressively, without political correctness, and with a focus on putting America first. One of Trump's signature achievements was his economic policy. Under his administration, the U.S. economy experienced significant growth. He signed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017, which lowered corporate tax rates and aimed to stimulate investment. Many businesses expanded, unemployment dropped to historic lows, and the stock market soared. Supporters credited him with revitalizing American industry and giving businesses more freedom to grow. However, critics argued that the tax cuts primarily benefited the wealthy and would increase the national deficit in the long run. Another major focus of his presidency was immigration. From the very beginning, Trump had promised to crack down on illegal immigration and build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border. His administration implemented strict immigration policies, including the controversial family separation policy, which led to widespread criticism. While his supporters saw him as a defender of national security, opponents accused him of cruelty and xenophobia. The border wall project moved forward, but it remained a point of heated debate throughout his presidency. On the international stage, Trump took an unconventional approach. He withdrew the U.S. from several major agreements, including the Paris Climate Accord and the Iran nuclear deal, arguing that these agreements were unfair to America. He also took a tough stance on China, engaging in a trade war that imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of goods. While his administration claimed these measures were necessary to protect American workers, the trade war created uncertainty for global markets. Trump also took bold steps in foreign diplomacy, meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in an attempt to negotiate denuclearization. No U.S. president had ever met with a North Korean leader before, and Trump's direct approach was seen as both historic and risky. Although the meetings generated global headlines, they ultimately did not lead to a formal agreement, and tensions with North Korea remained unresolved. His presidency was also marked by a deeply divided media landscape. Trump frequently clashed with journalists, calling major news outlets fake news and branding them as enemies of the people. He used Twitter as his primary communication tool, bypassing traditional media and speaking directly to his supporters. His unfiltered tweets often stirred controversy, but they also kept him at the center of public attention at all times. Perhaps one of the most polarizing moments of Trump's presidency was his handling of racial tensions and protests. In 2020, the killing of George Floyd by a police officer sparked nationwide protests against police brutality and racial injustice. While some leaders called for unity, Trump took a hardline stance, focusing on law and order and deploying federal forces to cities experiencing unrest. His approach deepened divisions, with supporters praising his toughness and critics accusing him of fueling racial tensions. The final year of his presidency was dominated by the COVID-19 pandemic. The virus spread rapidly, shutting down economies and overwhelming healthcare systems worldwide. Trump's response was heavily criticized. He downplayed the virus early on, resisted mask mandates, and frequently clashed with scientists and health officials. However, his administration also played a key role in developing Operation Warp Speed, which led to the rapid development of COVID-19 vaccines. While his supporters hailed this as a victory, his handling of the crisis became a major factor in the 2020 election. Trump's presidency was one of the most unconventional in U.S. history. His policies reshaped the economy, foreign relations, and immigration laws, but his leadership style divided the nation. He remained one of the most controversial figures in politics, adored by his supporters and despised by his opponents. But Trump's challenges were far from over. In the next chapter, we'll discuss the impeachment trials and the obstacles that defined his presidency. No American president had ever faced impeachment twice, until Donald Trump. His presidency was marked by constant battles, not only with the media and political opponents, but also within the government itself. Throughout his term, Trump faced fierce resistance from Democrats, and even some members of his own party. His leadership style, bold, combative, and unapologetic, kept his supporters loyal, but also made him one of the most polarizing figures in U.S. history. The first major crisis that led to impeachment proceedings was the Ukraine scandal. In 2019, a whistleblower accused Trump of pressuring Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to investigate Joe Biden and his son, Hunter Biden, in exchange for military aid. Democrats in the House of Representatives launched an investigation, arguing that Trump had abused his power for political gain. Trump, on the other hand, denied any wrongdoing and called the impeachment effort a witch hunt. The impeachment process moved quickly. In December 2019, the House voted to impeach Trump on charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. This made him the third president in U.S. history to be impeached. However, when the case reached the Senate, Trump was acquitted in February 2020, as the Republican majority voted against his removal. While impeachment became a stain on his record, Trump used it to energize his supporters, portraying himself as a victim of a corrupt political establishment. But the biggest challenge of his presidency was yet to come, the 2020 election. As Trump prepared to run for a second term, the COVID-19 pandemic hit, causing massive disruption. His administration faced immense criticism over its handling of the crisis. The U.S. economy suffered, and public confidence in his leadership wavered. Meanwhile, racial justice protests swept across the country after the killing of George Floyd, creating further unrest. Trump took a hardline stance, emphasizing law and order, but his response further divided the nation. The election was one of the most controversial in U.S. history. As votes were counted, Trump and his legal team claimed widespread election fraud, despite a lack of substantial evidence. He refused to concede, launching multiple lawsuits to overturn the results. His rhetoric intensified, and on January 6, 2021, a mob of his supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol in an attempt to stop the certification of Joe Biden's victory. The event shocked the world. Just days before leaving office, Trump faced an unprecedented second impeachment. This time, he was charged with incitement of insurrection. The House of Representatives quickly passed the impeachment, making him the only president to be impeached twice. However, once again, the Senate acquitted him, as not enough Republican senators voted for conviction. Despite the political turmoil, Trump remained defiant. Even after leaving office, he continued to challenge the legitimacy of the election, and maintained a strong hold over the Republican Party. His influence did not fade, and many of his supporters still saw him as their leader. The challenges Trump faced in office only fueled his determination. But was this the end of his political career, or just the beginning of a new chapter? In the next section, we'll dive into the 2020 election defeat and its aftermath. The 2020 U.S. presidential election was unlike any in history. America was facing a global pandemic, racial justice protests, and deep political divisions. Donald Trump was running for re-election against Joe Biden, a seasoned politician who had served as Barack Obama's vice president. The stakes were high, and the country was more polarized than ever. From the beginning, Trump positioned himself as the candidate of strength, stability, and economic recovery. He argued that before the pandemic, his administration had built one of the strongest economies in American history, and that he was the only leader capable of restoring it. However, his handling of COVID-19 became a major issue. While his administration played a key role in developing vaccines through Operation Warp Speed, critics argued that he had downplayed the virus, ignored expert advice, and failed to take decisive action early on. The pandemic changed the election dynamics, forcing rallies to be scaled back, debates to be held under strict safety protocols, and mail-in voting to become more widespread than ever before. Meanwhile, Joe Biden framed his campaign as a return to normalcy. He promised to unify the country, handle the pandemic more effectively, and rebuild alliances with international partners. Biden also focused on appealing to suburban voters and minorities, key demographics that helped swing the election in his favor. Trump, on the other hand, doubled down on energizing his core base, holding large in-person rallies and using social media to communicate directly with supporters. The election was held on November 3, 2020, but the results did not come immediately. Due to the unprecedented number of mail-in ballots, counting took days. On November 7, major news networks projected Joe Biden as the winner, securing 306 electoral votes to Trump's 232. Biden also won the popular vote by over 7 million votes. Trump, however, refused to concede. He and his legal team launched multiple lawsuits in key swing states, claiming widespread voter fraud. They alleged irregularities in mail-in voting, problems with ballot counting, and even conspiracy theories involving voting machines. Despite numerous court cases, no substantial evidence of widespread fraud was found, and the lawsuits were dismissed one by one. As weeks passed, tensions escalated. Trump continued to insist that the election had been stolen, and his supporters became increasingly vocal. The situation reached a boiling point on January 6, 2021, when Congress met to certify Biden's victory. That day, a large crowd of Trump supporters, fueled by claims of election fraud, stormed the U.S. Capitol. The violent attack led to multiple deaths, lawmakers being evacuated, and a historic security breach. The images of rioters inside the Capitol shocked the world, and the event was widely condemned by both Democrats and Republicans. In response, social media platforms, including Twitter and Facebook, banned Trump, arguing that his rhetoric had contributed to the violence. For the first time in modern history, a sitting U.S. president was cut off from his primary method of direct communication with the public. Meanwhile, calls for accountability grew, leading to Trump's second impeachment, this time on charges of inciting an insurrection. Despite the chaos, Joe Biden was inaugurated on January 20, 2021, officially marking the end of Trump's presidency. But even after leaving office, Trump remained a dominant force in American politics. His claims of election fraud continued to resonate with millions of supporters, and his influence over the Republican Party only grew stronger. Trump's 2020 defeat was a major political moment, but it did not mark the end of his ambitions. In the final chapter, we'll explore his future, his role in the Republican Party, the possibility of another presidential run, and his lasting impact on American politics. After leaving the White House in 2021, many believed that Donald Trump's political career had come to an end. However, his influence over the Republican Party never faded, and his loyal base remained as strong as ever. Trump had unfinished business, and his ultimate goal was clear: to reclaim the presidency. Against all odds, he achieved that mission. During his time away from office, Trump continued to rally supporters, challenge his political opponents, and shape the Republican Party in his image. He endorsed candidates, influenced key elections, and positioned himself as the leader of the conservative movement. His narrative remained centered around the idea that his defeat in 2020 was unfair, and that America needed him back to restore order, strength, and prosperity. In the 2024 election, Trump launched a vigorous campaign, doubling down on his signature policies: strong border security, economic revival, and an aggressive America First approach to foreign relations. The political climate was still deeply polarized, but Trump capitalized on rising economic concerns, dissatisfaction with the Biden administration, and the nostalgia among his supporters for his previous term. His campaign rallies continued to draw massive crowds, and his unfiltered style of communication kept him at the center of media attention. Despite facing legal challenges and opposition from within the Republican Party early on, Trump secured the party's nomination once again. The general election was highly contested, with both sides mobilizing their bases in an intense political battle. In the end, Trump emerged victorious, proving once again that he was one of the most resilient and influential political figures in modern history. As he returned to the White House, Trump wasted no time in implementing his agenda. His administration quickly focused on reversing policies from the previous government, strengthening immigration enforcement, renegotiating international agreements, and pushing forward tax and economic reforms. His leadership style remained as bold and controversial as ever, but his supporters saw his return as a necessary correction to what they viewed as 4 years of failed leadership under Joe Biden. Trump's second presidency, much like his first, has been filled with both triumphs and challenges. His policies have reshaped the nation once again, and his impact on American politics continues to be unprecedented. Whether his legacy will be seen as one of renewal or division depends on who you ask, but one thing is undeniable: Donald Trump's influence on the United States and the world is far from over. As history unfolds, the world watches his every move, knowing that Trump is not just a politician, he is a movement. His return to the presidency marks another chapter in a political career that has defied expectations at every turn, and his impact will be felt for generations to come.